back in the saddle. So we have four budgets to look at tonight: Human Services, Recreation, Public Works, Planning and Neighborhood Services, and then NPU at 8 o'clock or so. The first budget we have is Human Services, which includes Senior Center, Youth and Family Services, Administrative Adult and Family Services, and then finally Recreation. Senior Center is first, and although they haven't been open, the personnel has been used in other roles supporting our seniors. For example, we've been using our vans to drive people anyway, and we've been using it for meals, items like that. Our director has been keenly involved with the providing seniors services that are important to the pandemic situation, and also has been very important in being outreach to seniors that want to be vaccinated, and has been personally helping individuals to get appointments and whatnot. And the building has been basically open even though we haven't had seniors there. So when we look at the senior budget, which is on page 100, you'll see that we're spending most of the money in utilities and most of the items. There are some operational items that we'll spend a little less in, but generally Senior Center across is going ahead. Now, we are slowly phasing in senior services. We've been doing appointment services now, things like hair services and pedicures and things like that. And we're going to be increasing some of the direct participation in seniors. The last thing that would happen would be the food programs that we have, and I'm not sure exactly when we will do that yet. Probably not till the summer, until we really have a good handle on where the virus is going to be. So that'll be the last thing that's done. With that, I'll turn it over to Leanne for any other comments, and then we'll take any questions that you might have.
Yeah, thank you, John. That was very good. You hit on all the points that I would have hit on. I'd just like to give a really quick overview. I'm not going to tie you guys up. I'm hoping you guys get out early, like you did the other night. I just want to say that this has been definitely my hardest year in human services, but it's also been my most rewarding year. I think this year very much highlighted the importance of a local municipal human services department, and we were proud to, and I was proud of all of my divisions who stepped up and did so many different things to help during the COVID pandemic. We helped with food distribution. We wrote and received grants to give people rent and utility money. We helped with internet access, and the Norwich Public School System relied on us heavily to get their students and families on internet services. We did vaccination registration, as John alluded to. Mike Bullock at the Senior Center personally did many. Our department downtown did over 300 registrations. Mike ran clinics in conjunction with Uncas Health District, and it was very instrumental in getting many, many seniors and others in our community vaccinated. We delivered food. We did that for Meals on Wheels. We used our Senior Center Wheels vans to help Meals on Wheels. We delivered food to people who were infected with COVID or whose spouses were infected with COVID. We set activity bags home to families with coloring books and different activities because we knew kids were locked in the house and they were suffering from mental health issues. We delivered groceries. We did rec programs online. We did telehealth for our marriage and family therapy. We communicated to all of our partners and sent out weekly COVID update reminders so our people in our community would know what was going on. And we just did, I think, yeoman's effort, and I couldn't be more proud of all of my divisions and all of the people that worked under those divisions. It's been quite a year for us, but I hope you can see the value of a local human service department that you direct, that you can tell us what to do and what needs to be done, and we can respond immediately for our citizens. The senior center budget is fine the way it's presented. Mike didn't ask for anything there. We are maintaining there. We're doing okay there. Eventually, we'd like a carport for the vans. That's always been a concern of ours, but we know that that's a really big ticket item, and we continue to seek out other ways to protect our vans. A lot of vans from senior centers were vandalized this year. I guess the catalytic converters have some kind of precious metal in them that people are stealing the catalytic converters out, so we are parking the vans more in front of the senior center where it's very well lit. But we know how big an item that is. So when you have extra money in your budgets, let us know. We'd love to have that. But the senior center budget is as presented. Would you like me to answer? Or questions?
Do you want questions individually, each department as you go through? Okay, then let me start by just thanking you. You were supposed to retire, and you sacrificed greatly to stay, and I can't tell you how important that was for the people of the city and how grateful I believe all of us are. So I just want to start by saying thank you. Thank you very much. Do members have questions? Yes, Alderman Wilson.
Really not a question, but just a reiteration of the importance that many of these divisions, specifically the senior center, has played over this last year. I've asked a lot of questions, I've made a lot of phone calls because of knowing the importance that the senior center has had on the community. The individuals that go there, what they count on, and just the work that they've been able to do to help many of these seniors maintain during this COVID has been exceptional. And I want to thank your department for taking that extra mile during such a hard time. But also, I think, we've had this discussion before, is the importance that many of these individuals play. In a year like this last year, where it's been hard to get direct contact in other agencies when we're talking state and federal, we've got our own individual department that has been kind of the circumventer for many of those systems. So I just want to thank you for kind of what they've done in that division.
Members, questions? Yes, Alderman DeLucia.
So Leanne, it's feasible, right, that this will be the last time that you do this in front of the council. And I just want to say thank you, not just for what you've done in the last year, which has just been amazing, you and your department, but for all of your years of caring about people and bringing the city's assets to bear to help people that might slip through the cracks or that just don't have other resources. I mean, you've just been terrific your entire career, and you deserve the city's deepest appreciation. Over the last year, the mayor and Alderman Wilson have touched on it well enough. But again, I say thank you because, for all of the years that the question was asked, why does Norwich need its own human services department? Well, it only takes a pandemic or some serious event to answer that question. And, what's been going on at the senior center, I have colleagues in my building up on top of the hill there that were really at a loss for where they were going to get their shots. And, a couple of phone calls from one school nurse to Mike over there and Uncas Health, and a number of my colleagues who were very, very nervous about more kids coming back to school and having no idea how they were going to get vaccinated, and then all they had to do was walk across the street because, communication happened, and that's the culture that you've established and that your leadership has established, and you deserve our heartfelt thanks for all of that. So thank you very much. The only real question that I have is that, do you see our demographic changing, causing an increase in the number of, let's say, residents, clients using the senior center?
Yeah.
And has the pandemic also amplified that?
Yeah, Norwich is one of the most aging cities in the state of Connecticut. We are going to have one of the highest elderly populations in the state of Connecticut. I forget the exact year, but pick 10 years out. It's budding, and we're a very old community. So yes, the seniors that the question will be is, will they use the senior center, right? There's other things, other opportunities for people, but we think the senior center is the ideal place for them because of all the amenities that we can offer in programs and things like that. So I have no doubt that the next director of Human Services will work on that. But it's been my greatest pleasure to work here for 35 years.
So in the short term, with let's just looking at this budget,
Yeah.
the senior center has substantially has the resources that it needs.
Yes, I think that this year we substantially have the resources that we need. Obviously, this year is kind of a one-off. It's hard to measure this year against other years. Obviously, we saw our membership. We didn't get as many new members as we usually would. I have our quarterly report and our second about our quarterly report, and things are going to look skewed. But for the year coming up, I think we'll be okay with the budget that Josh has done.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, you're welcome. John? Oh, sorry. Your hand's got to raise the hand. Please.
Before I get out my tissues, number one, I miss going to the senior center, being invited there. I absolutely adore our seniors. And Mike is a champion of our seniors, absolutely, positively. So I can't wait for them to be able to get back into the building, because I know how isolated they feel. And that's no good for anybody to feel isolated. And it's apropos that Deanna is here. We'll have to find another project to work on with the next director of Human Services. It's been a great pleasure to work with you. Like everyone has said, you have done yeoman's work, and not retiring because of the pandemic shows your dedication to the city of Norwich. And we've been blessed, really, to have you, to have somebody who is so compassionate and is up in the middle of the night or first thing in the morning or on a weekend trying to figure out how we help someone in need. And it takes a special kind of person to be willing to do that work. So the next, you had great training. You had great training. But the next person who sits in that chair will really have to be filling huge shoes. I wish you the best in your retirement. And you're not even old enough to go to the senior center yet. She doesn't even get an AARP magazine. Well, you probably do because you're the director, but you're really not.
I'm old enough. I'm not over by a year. So.
Oh, just a year, okay, yeah, she just squeaked by.
Not me, I'm not.
55 is the age, so.
Oh, giving away the secrets now. But thank you for your hard work across all of the programs here. And when, I don't know if we have a target date yet to reopen?
Yes, so we had a great meeting today. 1st. A lot of it depends on our viral numbers, and when John opens up City Hall on May 1st or in May, then we will definitely bring seniors back. Certain programs, not everything, no food, no dining, but we're following the state guidelines. They're not regulations anymore, they're just guidelines, but June 1st is our target date.
Yeah, I think to get them back in for anything
Yeah, anything, yeah.
will be a tremendous lift to them.
Yeah.
So, thank you.
Alderman Bickford.
I might as well get in on the praise train here.
You're gonna be late tonight. You're gonna be late.
Well, certainly Bev Goulet before you and yourself, obviously, we've been very lucky. We've talked many times, you certainly have provided me an education, so literally. So, and as you know, and so it's been a great experience, for me to know you. So it's, and I certainly recognize that it was some level of personal sacrifice for you to stay on during this time. So, but I also believe it's a job you truly love doing. So, yeah, so it's not that big a sacrifice.
No, it was my pleasure, honestly.
But I just want to tell you that I certainly, along with everybody else, appreciate, all you've done and what you do and what you continue to do, and your staff. So, with that said, I think my questions tonight for you again, as far as the budget, I'll actually ask you something, So, surround the revenue issue and particularly grants. And in the past, we're talking about the senior center now, and I don't see a lot in there as far as that goes, but there are some things. How much of that goes to actually, paying or for any part-time or whatever positions, or is it all for contracted services or materials or something?
Yeah, so it depends on each division. For the senior center, the grants that we get are direct service, so it's for transportation, it's for the foot care clinic, and
Right.
go for those kinds of things. Sometimes we're lucky enough to get development fees from a grant, and that's something that I work with finance through that. If they want to give you 10% or 8% of the total for
Administration.
costs and things like that, administrative,
Yeah.
and we can sometimes use that to offset a position or a part-time person. We just did that downstairs because we needed someone to help us with all the COVID money that we got. So they worked very closely with Bridget and the finance department to hire a seasonal temporary person with grant funds that we have so that we can get special things done. And then you'll see when I do the rec budget too, we have an innovative way to hire a assistant program coordinator with revenues there. The rec department is different from the other divisions because they really can generate revenue through programs and camp and things like that. Yeah.
Well, if you'd like to save yourself the time of hearing my voice again, by all means, just go ahead and comment on those as the different parts come up, if you would.
Okay.
Yeah.
John, are you okay with that? All right. So I'll just say quickly that Youth and Family Services, the budget's fine. We're not asking for anything there. We added line items to that. We took line items out of adult and family. We added them there. We used to be housed together across the street, and now that they're separate, we just thought it made more sense for youth and family to have their own line items so you could see that. Adult and family, same thing. We're totally fine with that budget. We just have the increases that Josh has with utilities or whatever in that budget. The recreation budget, there's a lot going on at the recreation. We are doing amazing work there with revamping the fields and facilities, and I really have to thank Josh and John because they have allowed us and we have presented to you ways that we can recapture CIP money that we've underspent in other areas. So they brought resolutions to you, and we've been able to do things like resurface basketball courts and things like that we weren't expecting to do. We had extra money. So I have the work plan here. You should see our work plan. We just have so many projects that are going on, and it takes a lot to oversee those and make sure that they get done and that we have the funding to do that. So it's just a lot of work. So we had requested in the budget another program administrator was the rec director, there were actually 4 program administrators. There were quite a few there. And I don't think we're at the level where we need 4, but we certainly could use 2. So because we could not get that in the proposed budget, we have asked permission and have been granted to use our program fees to hire an assistant program administrator. So instead of paying, $63,000, I think we're going to pay $43,000 for the position, plus medical. We're going to have to fund the medical because it is a full-time job. And that person will be able to help us administer more programs at the rec. And if you've seen the spring and summer book, which I urge you to go online and check out, it's fabulous.
Is that the, I'm sorry, is that the person that's employed now as a seasonal?
No, she is, we might convert her into that if she's interested in doing that job, but she's hired right now with part-time seasonal money as a receptionist
Okay.
type person. All right. But I think if she is interested, we will absolutely take that. So, in talking with Josh and John about that, we're going to do that position out of our program money and see and make sure it doesn't totally deplete that account. And we're hoping that maybe when we get the American Rescue Plan money, there might be an opportunity to have some positions offset by that grant too. We're not sure. I know the Rec Association is kind of lobbying to make sure some of those funds go to rec departments for capital improvement projects and for staffing because, the quality of life issues, I suppose. But that's what we're going to do with our program fees this year. And we're hoping to continue to grow our revenue sources at the rec. So Cheryl and I have some great ideas. Camp is our biggest revenue. We may be able to partner with Norwich Public Schools this year. They are doing a free program for children that may detract from our camp, but we're going to partner with them and do some before and after care for them, and they have funds that they build and will be able to help us with. So we're really watching the revenue at the rec, hoping it continues to increase. We may dip our toe into child care activities and things like that, like we did with the program while some kids were remotely learning. So there are ways for the rec department to generate revenue, and we're hoping to continue that. So it's kind of a win-win there. And then other things in the rec budget, a lot of it is just things that we have no say or control over. Fringe went up a little bit. Utilities went up a little bit. Utilities went up because we irrigated 3 fields and we need to increase the water. It doesn't make sense if we have irrigated the fields and now we can't turn on the water. So Josh increased our utility line item there. We have vehicle fuel, which again is out of our purview, and that was increased. And the professional services went down really because we had put utility costs there and that wasn't the appropriate line item, so we moved those over. So, obviously all of our departments, we love to have what we had requested, but we understand the pressures of the city and the balancing act that we have to do between not raising taxes and getting what we need for our departments. The only other thing on this was the facilities maintainer. The part-time seasonal was decreased by $14,000 because we budget for 4 part-time seasonal maintainers and we can never hire 4. There's just not that many people out there. We're competing with MTU and Public Works. We usually do hire 2. So it was reduced because of that. So.
Okay, thank you. Questions, people? Alderman Wilson?
So we've had lengthy discussions about the rec department. I think one of the things that residents or anyone should know is the recreation department has been a huge backbone of this community over the last year. It's one of the first things to open up when we opened up in the spring of 2020 or summer of 2020, and the amount of back and forth and extra things that you've had to do in order to get programs off the ground. Only one who is in the middle of it would know. And, I think it's one of the areas that we are continuously seeing growth in. I mean, I know they've been very creative in some of the things that Cheryl has been able to put on. There is an increase in people that are interested in getting their kids involved since they've been in the house for so long. My question is, I know you requested 2 additional maintainers. Not having those, does that have an impact moving forward on some of the work that needs to be done to maintain fields and whatnot as we get back?
We requested 1 full-time maintainer, because the full-time person can do things that the seasonal part-time can't. right?
Correct.
They can't operate equipment, they can't drive the truck. We would like to have another full-time maintainer. As we improve field and facilities, right, you have to maintain them to keep them up. So, we have we have 3 people altogether, the supervisor and 2 maintainer ones. Again, we used to have 4 at one time, budget cuts, we lost one. So we did request a full-time maintainer there.
My next question would be, I know you requested the program administrator, you're gonna go with the assistant program person. What's the health insurance cost?
It's about 19,000, Josh would know, but I think it's about 19,000, yeah.
It's about 19,000. And I will say, one of the things we've went back and forth in that area, and I've had the opportunity to participate in some of the programs you've put forth and even volunteer coach. And it's a lot for 2 people to really handle. And specifically as I know there are more organizations asking to put on programs, and I've read the booklet, and it's tough trying to be in 10,000 places at once. So, I understand the hands that are needed. My other concern, I will say, is looking at budgets. I look at the percentage of projects in the capital improvement for recreation. And there's a hefty amount of them. Are there any specific ones that were not funded that you feel are priorities for the city moving forward in some of the areas with possible funding coming in?
We list our projects in the order that we would like them funded. However, at the last advisory board meeting, people were interested in investigating the splash pad.
Yes.
So we had an organizational meeting today at 3 with Youth and Family Services, Cheryl, Julie Cagle, who's on our advisory board, and we're fleshing that out. We've gotten some information from some other towns. It can't be as expensive as $500,000, but you could do it for a lot less. So we are working diligently on that. If there is an opportunity to have, that project funded this year, we would welcome that. But again, we understand that, money has to go to a lot of different areas. But that is something that we're working on. Splash pads can be used as like a cooling center per se for, especially for low-income kids that can't get to the ocean or up to the pond. There's no swimming pools in the area anymore, so there's a benefit there. It really, is a fun activity for children to play. Cheryl personally has experience with a splash pad in Colchester. We're looking at Granby and Waterbury right now. I think our next committee meeting is a field trip to Waterbury that has something like, 10, 11 splash pads. So we're looking at all different sizes of them to see what would be appropriate for Norwich. But that is something that just kind of came up in the last advisory board meeting. So we're looking hard at that.
And absolutely, I mean, so I was, of course, me and Alderman Nash were at that meeting, and, it's a question I ask. I know, using last summer as an example, it gets hot out, and the beach can only hold so many. And I realize you guys hire phenomenal lifeguards and waterfront directors, but it's stressful having a large amount of kids on the beach that may not have the best swimming skills, including parents sometimes, and having another alternative for kids to get wet, knowing we don't have swimming pools and things of that sort in the area, has been a concern. You know, for me, it's looking at the amenities to help those families that can't travel outside of the city to other beaches and things of that sort. I know we've had the conversation. There are ways where over time, it can be set up where it can pay for itself. You know, doing passes and things of that sort. So for me, I see something of that sort as a project down the line that could benefit itself and pay for itself over time. So I'm glad that it's something that you guys are really digging deep and looking into because it has a huge benefit to the community here in Norwich. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Other questions? No? Once again, thank you so much.
Oh, no problem.
What's the official date?
June 30th. God willing.
Sure.
Just keep
If the
writing
phone
it.
rings, are you going to answer it?
Just keep writing it in pencil. Write the date in pencil, erase it, move it back.
No coaching.
6 feet, please.
Next, the next budgets are the Public Works budget, and we'll also be referencing the capital budget on page 119. The Public Works budget starts on page 93. This is a summary of the Public Works budget by division. The first division is street maintenance, where the largest part of the budget is contained in it. The detail of the street and parks maintenance division is on page 94. Most of this budget is employees and benefits. There is a certain amount of overtime. Most of that overtime is budgeted for snow removal, but there is some overtime during the year, especially around paving in the summer and things like that when we have to get out there. Also, for miscellaneous emergencies that Public Works is called upon to respond to. We have the Public Works Director here tonight, and between us, we'll hope to answer some of your questions. Pat, do you have any opening remarks, or we'll just go through them one by one or so?
I'll just say maybe an opening that I just put together, basically a bare bones budget. I didn't request any additional positions this year, not to say that we couldn't use them especially. Probably the biggest need we would have for, would be someone to do like what the recycling coordinator did in the past with trash and recycling, keep that operation running smoother and to have greater compliance with the residents, more education. And also that position could also help with some of the other environmental type compliance, such as the the MS4 municipal separated storm sewer system now, which that burden was placed on us to a greater extent over the last couple of years. So I'm not going to say that we don't need any positions, it's just that I didn't judge that they would have been funded, so I didn't bother to put them in again this year. Because we probably could use another mechanic also, because we have a lot of equipment to maintain. But I did not request those later past process, and realizing that the city is in once again, it's in a tough situation, and a little bit uncertain with the way things are going. But anyway, so it's just basically as is budget, just maintained. We was able to add the laborer's position back in that had gotten eliminated at the last 11th hour last June. So that is in the city manager's proposed budget, and that is well appreciated. We took possession of our backhaul just in the last week. They're putting the decals and getting it all serviceable now. And then the tech rep is going to come out and give us a day of training on it. But the equipment takes people to run it, so we need everybody that we have. That's my summary of where we stand.
I have one question. I'll turn it over to everyone else. With the addition of the 5 new trucks, have we seen a marked lowering of hours? Because those old vehicles were taking about 2,000 hours of maintenance yearly. Have you seen a comparable reduction with those other trucks coming on service or something similar?
Certainly there has to be some reduction in that. I don't know about the 2,000 hours between 5 vehicles. That I don't think we were spending 2,000 hours on 5 vehicles.
It's a number I remember Mr. Raymond mentioning.
But certainly there has been some reduction in that. But there is lots of other aging equipment. Our truck fleet is getting older. But there's no shortage of work being done.
Okay, thank you. Members? Alderman DeLucia?
Thank you. So, Pat, we're coming here at my first year on the Public Works Committee, and I just wanted to say that how much I enjoy working with you, how well prepared you are for our meetings, how well you keep us, the entire committee informed on what's going on and the issues that are on the horizon. It makes it really easy to help with that decision making and provide input, because there's not a lot of question marks in the information that you share with us. So I really do appreciate that, and I enjoy very much working with you. Having said that, to expand on the mayor's question just for a moment, the fire study called for, I don't know if it would be a full additional person, but a person who is trained specifically for fire apparatus, given the number of apparatus that we have in this city and the testing that has to be done and the routine maintenance and the not so routine repairs that have to be done. As far as that recommendation is concerned, would you say that would be a reallocation of people and responsibilities at fleet maintenance, or would that be either a partial or even a full additional person when we get to that point of implementing those priority level things from the study?
Good question. I would say, well, there's only, fixing some of that equipment is very specialized. We have some, very good mechanics, but only a couple of them really are familiar enough with some of that fire apparatus to work on it. It's not something that any mechanic can do. So it probably would be beneficial to have someone on staff because of the amount of equipment we have citywide, it is more highly trained on just fire equipment. Probably would be a desirable thing from the city's standpoint.
So if that became an additional position down the road, that would be somebody that the city might have to be prepared to say, your primary focus is going to be this, and we'll send you to the schools and to the training. Or we might find somebody with that experience that wants to come to work for the city.
And we'd also probably have to pay them slightly more than a normal mechanic.
So is
in
it-
order to retain them.
Right, and I'm not trying to, pin you down, right? But do you think that that's more likely to be an additional person or the additional training to an existing person already working over there?
It could be either one, but, I didn't familiarize myself with that study, but, I just know from, dealing with the equipment that we have, that it is very specialized and it takes special skills, so additional training would be appropriate if we were going to have one of our own continue to maintain that equipment.
So, as I said, not looking to get a commitment out of you tonight,
We
but
could keep another mechanic busy.
Yeah.
We have the work, we requested that position in the past, but I'd say, I didn't put it in this year's budget because I didn't expect it would be funded if I, had to put it in.
So I'll just say that over this upcoming year, as we begin to roll out more and more of the recommendations from the study, we'll have to bring that that conversation shouldn't only happen in public safety. It's going to come to public works as well, so that we can discuss whether we get John Raymond involved in the conversation and see what's in the best interest of the city.
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Other members? Stacy? No? I'm good. We're good? We're all set? Thank you.
One other thing I should have probably said in my introduction, the solid waste budget has pretty much stayed consistent this year, but in the future, I know you've probably heard about what's going on in the rest of the state with solid waste. We're very fortunate here with Sierra Community Towns that we've got that they're subsidizing our trash disposal, and we've got a very good deal now in Lisbon for the next 10 years, but we're paying way below market price for our trash disposal. So that is going to be ratcheting up over the coming years to try to get us to a place that's more realistic and consistent with the rest of the market. So I'm just going to forewarn you that our trash budget will be going up in the future.
Well, I got a question on that then.
Not this year.
All right.
Go ahead.
If you, what are the tipping fees now at Lisbon?
Like we're paying, SCARA is subsidizing, but it's like 73 is our SCARA's deal with them. We're only paying 58.
Oh,
And much of the rest of the state's paying mid-90s to $100 a ton.
so we could be looking upwards of 25% increase roughly?
Yes,
Okay, thank you. Phased in over time,
over,
obviously. Yeah.
phased it over.
All right, thank you.
Yep. Thank you, sir. Alderman Wilson?
Just one small question. So I know you talked about in your introduction about the recycle and trash coordinator. It was, of course, a position that was in the budget several years ago. And the need for that going on. Could you explain kind of more what are some more of the concerns of why that position is a necessity or needed right now?
There's a lot of compliance issues. People are not always following the rules. They're putting, well, in the industry, we call wish cycling. If you're not sure what it is, you're maybe wishing it's recyclable, so you put it in your recyclable cart. Really, it's only for mixed recyclables and cardboard. It's not for like that old mop that you don't know what to do with, styrofoam, things like that. So it's getting people, having someone to knock on the doors and say, hey, look, this is what you're supposed to be doing. We have some stickers we try to put on the carts, just compliance, bringing your carts in off the street. So, excuse me, you need to bring your cart in. You're not supposed to just be leaving these out on the street. That's a nuisance for the neighborhood. So it's, and then improving the compliance with recycling helps that. I mean, Scarra towns are all kind of in the same boat with that. We're all paying, but Scarra is also subsidizing that recyclables because they're covering some of the recycling costs that Willimantic Waste is charging because of the non-compliance, the contaminated recyclables. But that's a big problem, statewide too. And that's, those are the kind of things, educational and informative, and trying to keep the city cleaner.
Excellent. All right, thank you.
Alderman Gould?
All right, so I'm going to follow up because you know how much I love blight, Pat.
That's not my office, Blake. At least it's not supposed to be.
But you get the call.
Yeah.
It continues, I still think it continues to be educating the public about what they can put in the blue bucket, what they can put in the green bucket, what they can put out for, or how to get a bulky waste pickup. I think that still seems to be a little bit of a sticking point. NPU has graciously allowed us to put that information into their billing, and I think we need to maybe try that again if they have a column for us to use, because the more you get the information out there, the better it is. They understand that they can make the phone call themselves and to do a bulky waste pickup, if they have a question about, does that go in the blue bucket or does that go in the green bucket, somebody's there to answer the question for them. So it's all about, I think, educating people on what they can and cannot do, or who to call if they have a question. So maybe, and I see Mr. LaRose is here, and
Yeah, they have helped us out.
they've helped us out in the past, absolutely.
In fact, they just, recently, we put a stormwater informational mailing in with their bills.
Right, so
We got some calls right after we did that, too.
So it's an excellent resource because everybody gets a utility bill and has to look at it. And I have one question about going back to the mechanic situation. You have money in professional development lines that if we had to send a mechanic to a school of some sort to get some additional training on keeping our fire trucks in good working order, that is something that we could do. That's what that is for.
Well, it's mostly for getting CDL licenses. It would have to be bumped up in fleet. Each division has their own professional development account. And typically a lot, like in the streets, it's used to get their CDL licenses, plus other trainings that we do. But in fleet, a lot of it was put in for that. But it could also, it definitely very much so could be used for that. And I can sometimes transfer some monies around when we have a little extra in one account and move it into something like training.
Right, so I think if John Raymond needs some help at fleet maintenance, that is one way to avail ourselves. If we have to send somebody out for training or bring someone in to train our mechanics on specifics on fire trucks, I think we should look into that.
Alderman Wilson?
One last small question. I know Alderwoman Gould talked about, the pieces that go into the MPU bills and things of that sort. This is more so a question, I would say, for the city manager. And it's not just for Public Works, but have we considered, when it comes to looking at how we disseminate information, upping digital and things of that sort, to have a better spread of people seeing some of the information we put out concerning not just Public Works issues, but any department when it comes about that moving forward. I know that COVID kind of has shown us that it is an area where, of course, people click, they see it all over the place. So just a thought going forward on utilizing digital and things of that sort a little bit more.
Okay.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Pat.
Thank you.
Thanks, Pat.
The next budget is on page 67. It's Planning and Neighborhood Services, and our department head, Deanna, is here tonight. Basically, this is a very busy department, and when it's busy, that's a positive thing. That means that there are things going on in the city, development, and items like that. It's sometimes it's busy with enforcement, and that's important also. It doesn't necessarily directly build up, but in the long run, when you have a city that conforms to its zoning regulations, it helps the whole neighborhood thrive. So there was a request in this budget for an assistant zoning enforcement officer / blight enforcement officer. I did come close to funding it, did not, and it's not that it is one of the highest priorities we have to try to enforce blight. Our person now that is responsible for this function really is pretty flat out at this point. And I think if we want to attack some of the areas which we have not been able to go after, then ultimately this is a position we will look at. As usual, I'm trying to be very frugal about additional positions, and didn't fund it this year. But it's something that down the road, I think that we will take a look at. It's also possible that under the American AR funding, that we can take a look at some of these items on a midterm type of situation. I'll let Deanna answer any questions, and if she has anything else that she'd like to say before we take on the questions. Deanna?
Thank you, John. I just wanted to compliment John and Josh on their review of my budget and for the department, and tell them how much I appreciate that they funded the majority of the things that we asked for. I'm going to address John's comment about the position first. It is a very highly desired position in our office, and I'm going to read you, if you don't mind, my response when I understood that it was not going to be in the budget, because I think it really summarizes exactly all my points. So please note that I feel very strongly about the need for the new Assistant Zoning Blight Enforcement Officer position. The OpenGov software will not reduce the amount of time and effort required for review of permits, nor reduce field inspections for zoning and blight housing code. It should be very clear that the new permit software is not intended to replace or reduce department staffing needs. The software may actually increase the need for the requested position, as it will allow 24/7 submission of permit applications and property complaints directly to our office. It's the department's goal to promote the use of the software to encourage the public submission of permit applications to reduce the number of non-permitted construction activities occurring in the city that are potentially unsafe and not being taxed. This will require assistance for the zoning enforcement officer and blight housing code enforcement officers. Furthermore, the existing log jam causing by having only one CEO who reviews 3 building officials' permits applications before they can issue a permit, on top of other responsibilities, will potentially worsen with the software implementation unless there is assistance provided. If the city is truly serious in its desire to prioritize zoning and blight housing code enforcement, the additional staff position is desperately needed. This position also ensures a contingency plan is in place for either the zoning enforcement officer or the blight housing code enforcement officer positions become vacant for any reasons. You may be unaware, but I'm the only person besides the zoning enforcement officer certified to issue permits. So I would say about right now, I probably spend about 20 hours a month doing zoning permits for the building official, for the zoning enforcement officer, so we can get permits processed. It's just too much on Rich's plate as the CEO, doing inspections in the field, enforcement, and all those permits. By the general statutes of Connecticut, it's required that the zoning enforcement officer signs off on building permits for zoning compliance before they can issue a building permit. Some of the time you think that an electrical permit, you wouldn't necessarily think the zoning officer needs to see that. However, if it falls within a special flood hazard area on a building, that triggers the zoning enforcement officer. If it's within a historic district, it triggers the zoning enforcement officer, who triggers it to the Historic District Commission. So that pretty much means every permit that comes into the city has to be looked at by the zoning enforcement officer. And again, it filters from 3 building officials. Right now we only have 2, but we have 3 positions filtered down to 1 person, and it does become a log jam, especially if there's a priority that there's an enforcement going on, someone's excavating, doing something that's an immediate attention getter, everything drops and has to be dealt with. So again, I really believe in offices helping each other out as far as within the staff within a department, so we all have that kind of mentality of, hey, we help each other out, and I do zoning permits. It is not something that I think as the director of the department should be spending time doing. However, I'm the only other certified person to do that. So that is about that position. I hope I answered those questions. So if you would consider that, I think that's important. A couple other things I wanted to touch base on, which kind of relate to this, is citations that were received for a housing code in blight. So far this year alone, we've received in, so that's been 3 quarters at the end of March, $22,160.99 came in for that citation. Citations are not guaranteed. We know that. We want compliance instead of citations, but that money does come into to the city for the work that's done through our office. A couple of other things I wanted to bring to your attention. That the station fund has not been funded for a couple of years, so I think that's something to think about. Usually it gets, we'd like to have to try to do a match for that, but I just would like that to be considered. It is in my, it's not necessarily in my budget, but it's something I work closely with the mayor's office on, the station fund project, and Josh as far as in the finance department. A couple last things, open space acquisition. I've been asking for the last 5 years since I've been here and working on the budget to please fund some money for that. The city should be purchasing open space, especially parcels that are very important to the city, that have historic or environmental sensitivities on them, that we should own, or properties that we feel that are adjacent to other properties that the city has, and grow our open space. And then the demolition was requested for $200,000, and in the capital budget, and $100,000 is put in there. I would like you to rethink that, or to think about putting some additional funds in there, so that when we get the foreclosure of future properties, that there is additional funds for that. I think it's important. We don't want to demolish, of course, historic buildings or anything like that, but there's properties that are in very bad disrepair, that the value may be in the land for redevelopment. And I think that's it, unless you have specific questions for me.
Thank you. You're having difficulty filling that third position. And you made a statement I read or heard on the radio, perhaps, you were looking at part-time as we get into the summer?
So we did that last time. That's how our last building official, Tony Jetmore, was hired, and Chris Case actually was hired as seasonal part-time employees. And then when the positions became vacant, they applied. It was a great way to actually kind of test them out, see their skill set, see how they get along in the office, and it really worked well. However, our preference was to fill the full-time assistant building official position that we just advertised. We only got 2 candidates that came forward at the end that were qualified. One took another position before the test was offered here, and then the other person took the test, and when I called for an interview, said that he was looking for a job about 1.5 to 2 years down the road when he retires. So it was kind of like putting his name on a list for the future. So we're kind of tied right now, trying to figure out, and we think if we went out for part-time, temporary, seasonal, that we might have some building officials that could do some early morning hours for us, afternoon, after work hours for us, really be flexible with them. Maybe they can do inspections in the field, or they can just come in and do just permits for us. So we really, we're open to working with anyone. So as far as they're a licensed building official and they're interested in working in the city.
Thank you. Question for John on the demolition issue. Do we have any capital funds left over from previous fiscal years that were set up for demolition?
I believe we do.
Do you know what that value is?
I do not know a particular number.
If not tonight, that's fine. I mean,
We do, and I want to say it's about $150,000 in somewhere in that neighborhood.
150, so this would make it 250
Right.
if nothing goes forward between now and the end of the fiscal year. Okay. All right, thank you. Members, Alderman Gould.
Could we, since we're having trouble finding a building official, or could we somehow in their job description, see if they have any zoning enforcement experience and sort of use them part-time here and part-time there to fill the need that you have to get inspections done, but you also have the need for somebody who has zoning enforcement experience? Could we be advertising it like an either-or and situation to sort of fill both needs that you have in the department?
I would love to say yes, but the answer would probably no, only because we have so much work for 3 building officials that they can't even take on zoning at all. I think it's something separate. That's why I think that both the blight officer and the zoning enforcement officer need assistance. So instead of having, each of them have a full-time, I think that combined position where, again, we're talking about contingency plans for the future, should one of them leave, that person has experience doing blight or a zoning enforcement officer. They can easily split in and do more time doing one or the other. It's vetting things out in the field. It's going out and dealing with the initial complaints. The zoning enforcement officer right now, like I said, could just sit at the desk and just do permits and not do any enforcement and still not have enough time. The blight officer is doing a lot of work out in the field, a lot of inspections out there, but the legal paperwork and the internal for her, that is the issue, is it just takes so much time to follow through with the process we have, because we have several different processes, a blight enforcement and the property maintenance code enforcement. There's 2 different routes, which we need to fix too as a city, I believe. But so spending all that time doing that paperwork is also an issue. It's too much for one person. So if this person could come in as one individual on that split job, help doing permits, or at least starting looking at everything on the permits, going, it's ready to go, the CEO just needs to sign off on it. The same thing, get everything vetted for the blight officer, or go and deal with those easy jobs. The person that has the tall grass, or just one refrigerator in the yard, or something like that, and being able to just do those triage, those problem ones, and get them off the plate. And I think we'd have a lot more successes because what's ending up happening is that several years ago there was a position in the Public Works Department. I think it was the recycling coordinator, and when that was in effect, and we had a different blight and housing code, which was one of our building officials now, there was a lot more coordination. So it was almost like 2 people were doing it because they really tag teamed. There's not as much of that anymore. So it's really all falls on one. And it's just, I can see the staff being overwhelmed, but it's not even just them as individuals. I think the work is just too much work for each one person, and they're both terrific at their jobs, so.
And my second question is the remodeling of the downstairs conference room, has that started?
No, not yet. Not yet.
Is
But
that,
that money that was already funded before.
Right,
That's
so-
not- No, that has not started yet, but I understand that Pat McLaughlin had an architect come out and take a look at it structurally to be able to do some plans to change things around.
okay, but the main floor, that's all done
The
now?
main floor's in really good shape right now. We're ready for whenever the city hall does get opened as far as the handicap accessibility, the push button door. I can't wait for some of the people who are on the different committees in the city, I think it's the disability committee, to be able to come see what we have done and how we're trying to do more accommodations for the public. I think they'll be really pleased. The efficiency setup is really well, it's set up really well, so that even during COVID, we were all able to operate there because of our separation distances between the officials now, and it's just done really well. I'm really pleased with the layout.
Great, thank you.
And thank you for funding that.
Thank you. Yes, Alderman Wilson?
So I have several questions. And I'll kind of start where Alderwoman Gould left off. When we talk about the staffing piece of individuals in the office, besides, so you explained that you had 2 individuals, of course, for the last one that applied, of course, and they took positions elsewhere. Do you find the process of like the examination and whatnot sometimes has its constraints on keeping people's interests? And do you think that there are areas in that process that possibly could be changed to make it more appeasing or advertising to individuals?
You know what, I actually do, and because I've had some feedback that the building officials have to take an exam, and we created an exam internally, we did it, and the building officials looked at it, and it's good. But these are licensed building officials that should already know this stuff, so it's like making them jump through another hoop, taking additional time off potentially at their job to come and take an exam.
Correct.
So I think that the examination portion, that's part of the interview when we do the real life scenarios and the questions and answers, is the perfect way to judge those officials.
Correct.
I think answering that other test, which, they've already are licensed, I think it's repetitive for them, and I think it is a little bit detracting from some people to apply because they have to take a test too.
And the reason I asked that question is I knowing that this is an area of concern, I've done my own research on other towns, municipalities across the state that may not require that, which makes it a little bit more appeasing for them to apply elsewhere, beyond just, salaries, but the process. So, that's just a question I wanted to ask because I know that can be a huge deterrent with the process that they've got to go through in order to be employed. Now, the other question I have is with the Sachem Fund. When was the last time that it was funded?
Actually, Josh Hopkins could probably answer that.
Actually, it must have been at least 4 years ago, because it's not in.
Yeah, I think it was longer than 4 years. I think
It's-
it's a remaining balance of, I want to say it's 16,000. Does that sound about right, Josh?
Yeah, so a little between 15 and 20.
It was before, when at least before I was on the council the last time, and that was
It's-
6-7 years ago.
Probably 2012, that might have been the last activity on award. It's a long time.
Yep.
I do remember asking for a contribution from the city, and I reached out to Mohegan Tribe first year of this term, and it didn't go forward. I tried to resurrect that, but it's been a long time. Yep.
And so the reason I asked that question is just more or less so for those in the public that don't understand this part. What are some of the things that the Sachem Fund has been able to, over the years that it was established, been able to help the city in what areas?
So, just in the last few years that I've been here, the Ellerslie Park, that was, a portion of that is funded with the station fund money. There was, some of the walking tours from the Norwich Historical Society were, so there was the Freedom Trail, there was a couple others that were also funded. I know in the past, they also funded, correct me if this isn't right, but I think they had funded the police department to have a person that was kind of assisted them like a community person, I don't know, like a community policing kind of program. I'm trying to think what else, since my time, it's only really been those last couple ones, the Norwich Historical Society and the park. However, because we've only gone out once, and the reason we haven't done it regularly, from my understanding, is because of the fund balance. To just, to go out and decide if the committee wanted to do it as to, all in one lump sum to some person, some organization, or if they want to make smaller grants. It really does do great things for the community. It can be a one-time type of event, but it really has also been things that last longer and that are culturally and historically significant to the city. And so I think it's just something, it's not in my budget, but I know I'm a member on that committee, and I just, and I co-chaired it under the previous mayor with a tribal member, and just felt like it's just an important thing, and it kind of gets lost, and I just didn't want it to be lost. I wanted it to be brought up again.
Absolutely, and I totally agree. I mean, it's an additional tool in the shed to get some of those small projects, and the one you mentioned about.
Collaboration with the tribe
Absolutely.
too, and it really gets us at the table. Uncas Leap wasn't involved in that, but that was going on at the same time. So we were having Sage and Fund meetings with the tribe, and then we were also working on the Uncas Leap project as the master plan at that time, which now is being built out. So if we hadn't had an opportunity to go down and take a look at the property, it's still not open, obviously, to the public, but that the ruin concept is really coming to fruition and looks terrific. So Public Works and Eloise have done a great job with that so far. So we're hoping maybe with some federal funds too that we can finish that project out. That would be great.
Excellent. And my only last question is, I know last budget, we funded, of course, the new software, and just wanted to know how that's coming along.
Yeah,
and with the.
It's come on terrific. So we're hoping, I think our goal is going to be after Memorial Day, because I think we want to try to, if it works out, be able to kick that in and have it start, or maybe it'll be the new fiscal year. So there's a lot of online, training going on within our office, but there's a lot of background that has to be done. So a lot of forms that have to be created internally. So I will tell you, as zoning enforcement officer, it's very technically qualified to be doing some of the stuff. He knows what he wants for forms and that kind of thing. So he's spending a lot of time doing that as well as doing the permits. It's another reason that he's so busy right now. But that's just a small amount of his time. But him and the head building official, Dan Coley, have been our leads from the office. And again, we are ready to implement that. It'll be 24/7. People will be able to submit and pay online for their permits. It's just going to be terrific, and will be consistent with many other communities in Connecticut, which will be great. Because our WAX's system is not like anyone else in Connecticut, so it really is not workable.
Excellent. And the other reason I asked that question is I know we've been talking about positions. Sometimes those seasonal or part-time individuals, going through the training process of some of this new software and whatnot takes time. So I do understand the need for someone permanent that can really impact the work. I know the pandemic has brought about a lot of individuals buying properties, renovating properties, so that's more work on you guys as far as getting them where they need to go so that they're satisfied. So that's the other reason for asking that
Well,
question.
one of the good things with the program that the city is going with is a lot of communities, again, in Connecticut have it. So if we can get a building official, a couple of us to come and work for us, temporary, part-time, at least through this construction season, summer through the fall, preferably. If we can't find a full-time person, hopefully it'll be an easy transition to using our software because so many communities are using it.
Excellent.
And if they are tradesmen themselves, a lot of the people who are contractors themselves, as well as building officials, are used to that program, so that'll be great.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, Next is Norwich Public Utilities. And there's a whole program description that starts on page 128. And the budgets then are on 132 and so on. So, and 134. So, thank you. I'm going to turn it over to Chris now for a brief presentation, then we'll take the questions.
Thank you, John. Tonight, I also have Laura Gerber, our financial planning manager here to answer any detailed questions of the.
Sit closer to the mic.
Thank you.
Yeah, you gotta be.
Yeah, you've got to
right
be a
on
little,
top of it. It's gotta be right
unfortunately
in
with
front
that
of
one,
it.
Chris, got to be on top of it.
Okay, so I also have Laura here to answer any detailed questions as she put every line of the budget together through all of our staff. So thank you for taking the time to allow us to present our budget. This year, we changed the way we do our budgeting process significantly. We started off in late 2019 performing a detailed cost of service analysis of all 4 of our utilities. We were then able to create a 3-year rate track that the NPU Board of Commissioners approved in November of 2020. That provides predictability of our rates for our customers, and it also greatly enhances the budgeting process because we're working to a goal versus putting together a wish list and then trimming it back. Our leadership team reviewed our strategic plan and started to build a budget based on our on our goals to continue to implement the board's priority of supporting economic development, investing in our aging infrastructure, meeting or exceeding all of our regulatory requirements, exceeding our customer service and reliability expectations, and deploying technology for the combined benefit of both NPU and the city. We then performed a risk analysis of our systems, updated our long-term capital spending plan, and using the cost of service study, created the balanced budget for our board review. When I presented the fiscal year 2021 budget last year, we had just entered the pandemic shutdown, and we were projecting revenue drops of up to 20% at that time. We also didn't know the full impact of the pandemic, if it would disappear like a flu in the summer, or where we would bottom out. We dramatically reduced our spending and were able to manage our way through the pandemic. We have budgeted our normal operations for fiscal year 2022 once again, and if we see any additional downturns from COVID-19, we will once again use that strategy of managing our spending. The NPU board unanimously approved the proposed budget on March 23rd, 2021. For the 3-year rate track approved in November, our electric revenue will be increased by 1.5% in November of 2021. Our natural gas revenue increased by 2.3%, and our sewer revenue will increase by 6%. Water revenue remains unchanged for the next 3 years. If in fiscal year 22, the average NPU's for-service customer, gas, water, sewer, and electric, will see an increase of about $8.32 per month, or 2.5% of their overall bill. One of the biggest values that NPU brings to the city and our community is our 10% payment to the city. This year, we'll be contributing over $8.6 million to the general fund. The revenue is calculated on the previous year's audited financials and is impacted by both wholesale costs of the commodities and by sales. As you can see in the 10-year forecast, the number fluctuates year to year and doesn't always go up. This year, we're budgeting a reduction of $520,000, primarily as a result of restaurants, schools, and other businesses shutting down or reducing their consumption between February and June of last year when the pandemic came. Next year, we're also expecting to see an impact due to COVID restrictions, and we'll have a better forecast in the next month of what that would be, and we'll provide that to the council. next year it's going to be impacted with businesses like Freeport and more closing. On the positive side, we're seeing schools and many other businesses returning to normal and looking for a good recovery. This year, we're budgeting revenues of $100,291,000. Expenses of $96,053,000 for a net change of $2.8 million. As we do not control our revenues, our only control we have is our expenses, and we'll manage them as needed in the next year. We're also committed to assisting our community, and will again be providing Neighborhood Assistance Act contributions to local nonprofits. This year, we're able to contribute to the Arc of Eastern Connecticut, Habitat for Humanity, the Norwich Historical Society, and St. Vincent de Paul. And we look forward to assisting other great organizations with their projects next year. NPU and our employees continue to support the United Way, which is needed more than ever, and we will continue to support other events and organizations in our community as they're needed. Our $100 million budget reflects normal operations and our best plan for July 1, 2021 through June 30th of 2022. We will continue to be flexible and adapt to market forces as they arise. And Laura and I are here to answer any of your questions.
I do want to add something. It is possible that some of the revenue lost during the pandemic this year and next year can be replaced by some of the grant money that's forthcoming, the monies that will have been approved in March and will have regulations in May. So it's possible that we would be transferring some monies to NPU after we have the regulations on that to make NPU whole for next year. Now, that'll have ancillary benefit to us then, because then it's possible that we may not have to have as much a reduction next year. As you see from what Chris said, we had about a $500,000 reduction this year, and I expect that under the regular circumstances of revenue that we've had now, we would have a subsequent reduction next year. If we have the revenue reimbursement from the federal government, then that would mitigate to some extent that. And that's part of what the design of the act is, to try to even up lost revenue in those areas. And certainly NPU's revenue was impacted directly by the coronavirus.
Thank you, John. Chris, just quickly, thank you for managing what you've gone through. I know you eliminated overtime throughout last year. You cut back on major projects to assist that effort, and that helped you continue to balance the books that you presented to us tonight. So thank you for that leadership, because that was really needed at that time.
It's not just my leadership. All employees from NPU sacrificed and did their best.
They all did. Thank you. Members, questions? Alderman Wilson.
Again, Mr. LaRose, I want to thank you for the job you do over at NPU. I know it's like any other department. You guys have, of course, been impacted by COVID, and I think the city manager kind of answered part of the question I was going to ask. Moving forward, I know there are still going to be that impact coming into next year. And so the other question I have is, I know there were some halts on some major projects and things of that sort. Do you have that plan, a plan in place if something of that sort was to change within your budget this year?
Yeah, so there are certain projects that you can push out and increase risk and may have some impact on operations, but there's also certain things that you can't push off anymore.
Correct.
If we were to stop doing tree trimming, for instance, that would immediately, we took a little delay on that, but we did feel a little of that impact. We have to get caught back up and make sure we're not, causing any negative impact to our customers. Things like replacing a gas main, well, maybe we can push that off a little bit. we're running new lines to replace some of the lines up on Laurel Hill on the electric system. If we push that out 6 months or a year, that's something we can live with. We just want to make sure that we're doing the right things that are needed to make sure we don't impact the reliability in the short term.
Excellent. And I know you probably are meeting quite often to, mitigate the plans as the year goes on and months and whatnot. So I do appreciate that. And I think one of the things that, we did have several brutal storms that impacted other communities that we, your guys and women that are working each and every day, were able to mitigate, so I think that's the blessing of having you guys here to service us, is some of that quick response that we get and the quality of work that we get. So thank you for those two answers.
Alderman DeLucia.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for being here tonight. It's been a long time since we've seen each other. It's good to see you both. A couple of quick things. So first, the reduction of $500,000 in the payment back to the city is obviously based on reduction in revenue, but that's not, that reduction in revenue is not people who were unable to pay their bills, right? This is actually just reduction in use of utilities because businesses were closed.
Yeah, we pay the payment to the city on gross revenue. So if a customer can't pay and they owe us money, that does not get deducted. The city gets paid 10% of that. But when when the school shut down for the spring of last year and significantly reduced their usage, that was money that we can't recoup.
Yeah.
When Freeport went out of business, when the ACLS laundry shut down because there was no casino operations,
Sure.
that's the money we can never get back.
And for the people who will email us up here and ask us, well, they'll say, wait a minute, hang on, it looks like just under $2,000 increase in total revenue, but how come the payment to the city is decreasing by $500,000? These revenue numbers are all for utilities, right? And the payment to the city does not include sewer, right? And that's what the difference is. Because people will do the math and say, wait a minute, 10% of 100 million, how come we're not getting $10 million back, right? So again, I just want
Yep, sewer is run,
Right.
it's statutorily a different animal, and we cannot get 10%.
right. So that people understand, it's not your revenue went up, but you're, reducing by choice because it's not a choice. It's a straight math calculation, and the parts of the revenue that the 10% are calculated on have all decreased this year. Perfect.
Additionally, when you look at the budget,
Microphone, please.
additionally, when you look at the budget, you would look at the audited numbers from last year to see what the payment to the city is for next year. It's not a current revenue and payment
Right.
process. It's
Get
always
right
a
to you.
historical number for the
Yep.
future. So we can have audited revenue numbers and know exactly what we had for revenues, and then that's the process.
Alderman DeLucia, Josh Parthia has something to add, if you would let him, please.
I was just going to say what Laura said.
Two great minds.
Done, exactly right. So.
Okay,
So
sorry.
again, thank you for your great work. And, Alderman Wilson mentioned the two kind of hairy storms there. And, I was late to work one day and I had folks that didn't come to work for 3 days that don't live in the city of Norwich. So,
It's a great team effort, and our employees take a great pride in getting our revenues.
thank you. Again, good to see you both.
Thank you. Alderman Gould.
Thank you for being here tonight. I was on the phone with someone this morning who told me that the house next door to them has been vacant for a long time and all of a sudden got purchased. And they went over and said to the people, why, what brought you to Norwich? And they said, we're sick of not having our utilities on. So again, MPU does a fantastic job. The people who work in the field. Not that you guys don't do a great job, but it's the men and women who are out there after the storm, during the storm, getting our power back on, getting the water emergency fixed, getting that gas leak fixed. It's second to none. How are we looking on the wastewater treatment plant upgrades? Is that still on track, or has that been slowed down?
No, actually, it's on track, and we're trying to accelerate it because the potential infrastructure might come. So right now, we have provided State of Connecticut need some additional requests for us to finish our design by November, go out to bid, and have construction start in the spring of 2020. So right now, we have rates in place. We have everyone aligned to get us to that goal. And it'd be great to get there, and it'd be even greater if we can get additional funding, which will lower the rates that we already have in place.
Because that's what drove some of that 6% increase, was to upgrade the wastewater treatment plant.
Yes.
And my only other question, I remember being at the ribbon cutting for the natural gas fueling station on Town Street. Have we seen an increase in use? How did that sort of,
I don't have the number, I don't have the actual number in front of me, but over the course of the last year during the pandemic, we've seen a significant decrease of usage at that station. With people being home,
Sure.
not traveling, it's immediately an impact in regards to the CNG sales at the fueling station.
And in general, what we're seeing is a move away from natural gas and into electric cars. So we are promoting electric vehicles. We have incentives in place for electric vehicles. All of the new housing complexes, we are working with the owners to provide them incentives to put them in, and that will attract, high-tech renters as well as increase our load. So it's a little self-serving, but we are having a great success with the new apartment complexes. We're also having a great success with our combined heat and power units, the CHIP program, where people are putting in, replacing older, carbon fuel appliances and replacing them with electric split units that can provide heat and cooling in the summer.
okay, thank you.
Just a quick question. When the ITC was built, the conduit lines were put in for electric. Any plans for those heads to be installed?
Right, that's something we can look into. It's been a while since we have,
Yep.
and if there's a need, we're
Okay.
happy to do it.
Thank you. Members?
I just thought of something else.
Go ahead.
Are we expanding the gas line? Where are we going next for like residential gas line? Because I absolutely, love my gas stove and my gas furnace.
Yeah, so we have only a small amount of that grant left, or the bond left, and we've hit most of the low-hanging fruit in the city. We're using it to change out our AMI meters, regular gas meters to AMI, and we are also prepared to run the line the rest of the way to the Preston River Walk when that happens. We don't want to get it there too soon and spend that money before we have to,
Right.
but we are prepared to bring natural gas to that development. And right now, we're on 2A, but about a mile away.
Great, thank you.
Other questions, members? Thank you very much.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you. Tomorrow night, we continue with our workshops. We have Otis Library at 6, and then at 6:30, we have the Norwich Public Schools. So that's the two we have on Tuesday. Thank you.
Thank you. We are adjourned.